Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Schenk, welcome. Let me pick up where Dr. Coburn left off there. I've been here 3 years now, and we've been talking about cybersecurity. I was actually in the meeting with a bunch of senators trying to hammer out a cybersecurity bill. A pretty prevalent attitude in that room was that businesses, the private sector, needs to be forced into protecting their cyber assets. Is that your experience in the private sector?
So I came from a large cyber provider. So no, we didn't need to be forced to protect cyber assets, but I can tell you that our customers didn't either. They had either experienced a breach or knew enough to know that they would experience a breach. And many in the field say that there are two kinds of companies and entities right now, those who know they're compromised and those who don't. So the issue is how we raise cybersecurity to a business discussion. I think that the framework and the voluntary program will get it to the boardroom because it becomes part of the risk. We don't force people to lock their doors, and yet they do. So this is part of a culture of security that has been talked about for 12 years. I think Howard Schmidt is the first person to use that phrase back in 2000 or 2001, 2002, and looking at how we continue to engage that private sector innovation, drive the market. Once NIST engaged with the private sector, they sent out their best and their brightest for 3 to 4 days at a time to workshops that required long flights. And they're continuing to remain involved because they see the importance, not just for their brand reputation, but for their customers, and candidly as part of our nation's network and our global assets.
Well, it was certainly my attitude, and trust me, I was the minority view that I really think businesses want to protect their cyber assets and actually look to government, acknowledging the fact that the government has an awful lot to offer. And so I've really been pleased with what NIST is trying to do, make this a voluntary approach. It's the way to go. If we can facilitate cybersecurity versus dictate it, I think this will work. If we try and dictate it, I think the private sector shuts down. Over these 3 years, it seems like the number one component or the first priority is really facilitate that information sharing. Ms. Schneck, you talk about need for speed. What is the greatest inhibitor to get that free flow, that rapid, the speedy information sharing that's required if we're going to, detect cyber threats and try and contain them as much as possible?
So I have an optimistic view of that, and there are pockets in the private sector that can already do this. That's how I know we can build it, and that's how I know how. I built one of those in my previous life, where the analysis of data can be in real time pushed out with traffic. I think our job as government, and especially with DHS as a lead civilian agency for this, with the ability, again, to do it right with privacy experts and civil liberties and show the world exactly how we do it, we have the ability to correlate information and get a global view of what traffic might be okay and what might not be, and to literally pass that at machine speed, just as you send an email.
But businesses have got to feel comfortable to share that information. Isn't liability protection a big problem in terms of businesses not being willing to share that? And isn't that something Congress needs to do?
So we look at liability protection. I can give you an anecdote from my previous life. This is something that would have helped us because I was often in situations where it's company or country, and can you share? The lawyer won't let you, but you know that the information you have from the research you do could help a lot of people. So I know the administration is looking at targeted liability protection. And again, my perspectives have changed a bit since I've come over to government because I see some of the different challenges. And part of what I want to do is bridge that, and that's why I want to build that trust. And I think that the targeted liability protection that the administration is looking at right now would help us because it would protect companies in the instances defined to share information, and they wouldn't get hurt by that and wouldn't be held liable, nor would their shareholders if, for example, in my case, when I did this, a sector could be exposed for having potential liabilities. But it wouldn't be so broad that it threatens even the optics or the perception of threatening our privacy and civil liberties, because we are fighting to protect, again, our way of life. So it's a balance.
The devil will be in the details on that one. First of all, I'm pleased to hear that you appreciate the talent that's already in your agency. That's good to hear. I'm intrigued, by the way. I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to leave probably a pretty good paying job and come in here and do work for the federal government, pretty important work.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you, if you would have had to gone through the confirmation process, would have you decided to make that switch?
If I had to go through the confirmation process? So
Did you go through the confirmation process? 'Cause my information is you didn't. But-
Not the Senate confirmation, no, sir.
Correct.
But I would have done it anyway.
Had you gone through the confirmation process, would have that prevented you from considering a position here in the administration?
No.
Okay. In terms of attracting other people into government, into these high-tech positions, certainly there's kind of the mission challenge that's attractive, but again, there's a lot of good-paying jobs out in the private sector. Can you speak to what the kind of dollar differences we're talking about?
Oh, wow. So again, all that's, it depends
I'm
on
a
the
business guy,
company.
so I focus in on some of those practical concerns.
So in many cases, sir, there's six-figure differences, and that's before the stock. However, I think there's a much more important, and it's not always that way, right? But there's a much bigger, I think, calling, if you will, and that is that when you get to government and you can, and I only learned this 6 months ago, but how much people in government do so that someone in my position never knew it got done and just felt safe every day. I think that having that other piece of knowledge helps bridge the gaps that we need to bridge to keep our economy, to let our private sector drive innovation, to keep our country in leadership in science, and all of that will make us more secure. And so what I would love to do is be able to pull some more people from the private sector and say, come see what I learned and come join our team and help us. I know that our mission can pull them. From what I'm told, the hiring process is very, very difficult. And if, again, we could get that help from Dr. Coburn and from the committee, and yeah.
It's really the point I'm trying to make. Having come from the private sector, which obviously has got bureaucratic problems as well, can you just compare and contrast a little bit in terms of what you see, what your viewpoint is, comparing bureaucracy in the private sector versus bureaucracy here in government? Because again, this has been an urgent need since I've been here, and even before that. This is 3 years. We're still moving forward. We're still talking pretty much about the same issues, although there has been some real advancements because of the executive order at NIST, and I appreciate that, but we're still, it seems like a long, we certainly have a ways to go.
So do you mean in the hiring or in the technology?
No, I'm just talking about just in terms of moving a process forward.
So
in bureaucracy versus the private sector versus government.
So in my short 6 months here, I've learned that working with our partners across the department, as well as across the interagency, and certainly with committees such as this, is the best way to get things done, because you build support for what needs to get done. You target your budget, your blueprints, and your outlook, your strategic plan towards what you feel needs to get done. In a company, I think that sometimes things move a little bit faster, but bringing that together, and that's what companies can do best. That's why they can innovate so quickly. But then again, there are rules and reasons why we have government processes. I've had the opportunity and honor to start to understand some of that. It keeps government honest. And we do have a lot of information and deal with very large budgets. I think that's fair. But again, bridging that, building that partnership, building that balance. I have seen both bureaucracies, and I know we can work together, and I plan to get that done with your help. We need your help.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.